It's Listen In with KNN, the sports sound of the district. We bring you the biggest guests, great analysis, and the hottest sports stories in the nation's capital and beyond. And we bring it to you live. Welcome to this live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN. Here's your host, Kelsey Nicole Nelson.
Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday. Thanks so much for joining me for a special live stream edition of Listen In with KNN, presented by Fox Sports Radio, 96.9 FM and 1340 AM. I'm excited to be back. I know there was many questions. Is Kelsey going to continue her show? Yes, I'm continuing my show, bringing you all exciting new content each and every week, where I'm not letting you down today because I'm joined by a very special journalist. And I also, of course, just want to give a reminder really quick. Every Saturday at 2 p.m. and every Thursday at 6 p.m., we will be having this show. Next week, I'll be joined by Marcus Liberty, former NBA player. So super excited to welcome him back next week. And also LeVon Kirkland, Pittsburgh Steelers fans, he will also be joining me in October. So lots of fun things coming. But without further ado, let me get into today's guest. And wait, I also have to wish my grandmother a special happy 93rd birthday. Amazing, 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 amazing feat. I love you very, very much and just excited to be here because of you. So I hope you have fun for your birthday. I'll have to get to Mississippi soon so we can celebrate. All right, so now let me welcome on my very special guest for today. He is none other than Gary Washburn. He is a national NBA writer for the Boston Globe. Many of you all have probably read his work, and his stuff just a phenomenal journalist, and he is in the bubble. So he can give us all the great details. I'm going to bring him on right now to talk about NBA, his journey in sports, and so much more. So please help me welcome none other than Gary Washburn to the show. Gary, how are you today?
Great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you feeling? How are you doing? I like to do a wellness check with my guests first, Gary.
Oh, everything's fine. Yeah, it's a lovely Saturday here in Orlando. So it's a little hot out here. The summer has not ended in Orlando, so but it's good because I know some of the countries are getting a little chilly. But yeah, everything is good here in life in the bubble.
Very glad to hear. I'm a little jealous because it's a little colder here in the DMV area, and I'm a summertime person, Gary. I like sun, I like the sweat, I like the heat. So I wish I was there. I haven't picked up that it's fall yet until I go to Starbucks and get my pumpkin spice.
Yeah, it's a little chilly out there. So yeah, but here, no, it's not. We ain't got the memo on fall yet.
So let's get into it, Gary. I mean, you've been in the bubble since when? Since July, right?
July 12th, I got here, yes.
Oh, my gosh. So how many days is that? I'm not good at math, so I'm going to let you calculate that.
I think tomorrow it will be 11 weeks. I want to say 11 weeks tomorrow, Sunday. Yeah, so almost 3 months.
How surreal is that experience for you? I mean, you haven't been home. You've been in Orlando, not around your family. Like, what's that been like for you?
Wow. It's a real experience, to be honest. It's kind of and it's kind of getting away. Like if you want, it's like, I don't know, I wouldn't say hibernation as much, but it's like those old karate movies where the guy would go off to some journey and he would come back in like 3 years. It's something like that. Like you go off away from your family and friends, and you're into this like basketball kind of convention where it's nothing but basketball, and then all the health stuff we have to go through. And you can't leave campus. We can't walk any further than the barriers that are around this here campus, or if not, we could take a bus outside. We have to stay on the bus and then take us to the arena or the practice facility. So it's a definite adjustment to your life, the food, not being around your family, the limitations, the health things. So yeah, it's a lot to digest. But once you get used to it, you're okay. It's a definite adjustment here. First, it's the 1 week quarantine we have to go through.
Oh my gosh. So what was that quarantine period like for you? I'm one of those people, this is the most I've been home, Gary, and I'm complaining and I can go outside. So what was that experience like when you first arrived?
It was interesting. I mean, you can't leave your room. They would test you every day. So they would come to your door with the swabs, 3 testers, and they would literally test you right outside your door. So that's the only time you really got to open your door, was to either get your food, because they would knock on your door They would have a cart. They would just deliver your food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. And either you read, you find a little spot to exercise, and you watch a lot of Netflix and a lot of TV. You catch up on all the shows and all the series. You like, oh, dang, I didn't get a chance to eat. You got plenty of time.
Yeah.
And then, if you're working, you do your Zoom calls, you talk to your friends, you FaceTime, but you just can't leave the room. And it's hard because you can look outside and see people at the pool, because there's a pool outside of my room.
Wow.
So you can literally see like people swimming and all that. You're like a kid who's steaming up the windows outside this, when you want the candy store or something, like you can't go outside, you can't do anything for that 1 week. And so after the first few days, it went kind of fast. So it wasn't suffering per se, but it was a definite adjustment period. You just knew I can't leave. You might stick your head outside your door to smell some fresh air, but that was it.
Oh my gosh. So just going back to that, because I'm curious, and I'm sure minds want to know, what was the best Netflix series that you watched while in the bubble?
Oh boy. Okay, I finished watching the one, but it was Epics. Okay. It was with Forrest Whitaker playing kind of Bumpy Johnson.
See, I didn't see this one.
Yeah, he plays, the character that was, you remember the movie Hoodlum? That might be a little bit before your time. With Lawrence Fishburne. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It was like 97, 98, where he played Bumpy Johnson, the big time Harlem gangster.
Yeah.
So Forrest Whitaker revisited this role and plays this kind of big Harlem kingpin in the 30s and 40s, where he is befriending like Malcolm X and Adam Clayton.
Yes. I have seen this movie.
So it's a series. So it's 10 episodes. So I caught up in that, and it kind of revisits history. Like you don't know if like Bumpy Johnson and Malcolm X and they're all like, but according to the show, they're all kind of hanging out. They're all running New York in their own particular ways. So I caught up on that. Honestly, Kelsey, Disney has a channel that runs nothing but Disney movies, which is kind of cool. Like they have the cartoon movies too,
right.
But the Disney Channel here runs like it's nonstop. Glory Road, Hidden Figures. So I've seen it like 4 times now. I saw it before, but that was awesome to watch all the way through. Black Panther, obviously with unfortunate death of Chadwick Boseman, that's been awesome to kind of catch up on. So sometimes I just turn on the Disney Channel. Remember the Titans, they'll show, constant, like nonstop, no commercials. So that's kind of cool too.
Yeah, I'm jealous with the no commercials. I'm never complaining about Disney movies, especially as a 90s kid, all right? I grew up with Disney movies. And just going off of that, you also said you did a lot of reading. I'm curious, what was the last book you read since you've been in the bubble?
Well, there's a book I'm still working on. Okay. It's about the last 5 years. This author named Taylor Branch wrote a trilogy on Martin Luther King's life, beginning from kind of his Morehouse days. And the first part is kind of like all the way until the letter from Birmingham jail, then to the letter to Birmingham jail to the I Have a Dream speech. And then the last part is the I Have a Dream speech until his death. And it's fascinating. I'm kind of fascinated with the last few years of his life, about how he became more politically, awoke, and he was more about economic power, and he was against the Vietnam War. If anyone wants to read, the last few years of Martin Luther King was fascinating because he wasn't the same King that was like in the early 60s. He had befriended Eldridge Cleaver. He had befriended more younger members of the civil rights movement who were like telling him like, hey man, like the boycott thing is great, but it's about economic power. It's about money. It's about like wealth. That's what we need. We need economic, and so obviously before he was killed, he was organizing the Poor People's March, because if you recall, if you got like the movies and reading, he went to Mississippi and saw like literally like how a lot of us Black people were living like literally in huts and tents and just horrible conditions. So I've been jumping into that book, which has been enlightening to see, kind of, because you kind of have this our narrative of Martin Luther King is the "I have a dream" speech. That's all we see. But there was so much more to the man.
And I love that you touched on that, especially since I have family from Mississippi and, just the impact that he has. I love that you said it's so much more than I have a dream speech. It's what's always out there. And I think especially when we're in school, what we're taught, that there is so much more and so complex. So I appreciate you touching on that. And because I'm nosy, Gary, I'm also going to ask you, this is my Southern side coming in. How's the food really? Because, I feel like it's one of those questions when people ask, how are you feeling? You're just normally say good, even if you're not feeling good. Like, how's the food really? Are they treating the journalists well down there? Feeding you
well? Wow. That's a loaded question, Kelsey. Okay, so the conditions are this: they feed it 3 times a day. There's a area where there's like a restaurant. It's kind of a eat-in little area where we can go and eat, and then they serve us food there. And it's breakfast at certain hours, lunch at certain hours. So it's like school or like college, right?
Yeah.
And certain dinner. So sometimes they just have stuff you just are not going to like. Like yesterday. And this is my personal thing.
Right.
They had salmon. I'm not big on salmon. They had veggies and then eggplant parmesan.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, that was for lunch. I'm like, man, I'm gonna skip lunch. And so the alternative is if you're missing lunch or you don't want to have what they have, there's snacks. Like, so you become the snack king or the snack queen. Chips, candy, they have some fruit, but sometimes it's old or rotted, honestly. Things that like you probably in your normal everyday life would stay away from. No one's going to, you're like, we're not eating like potato chips like we used to, or we're eating the fat-free potato chips or the baked ones, right? Like here, you just throw out all your dietary philosophies and it's just about getting something to eat. So there's been times I've had like potato chip lunches or corn chips because there was nothing else left to eat. Yeah. Now they have restaurants here that we can order out, so they'll deliver the food. But sometimes there's really conditions here. Like there's a restaurant that only serves good soul food restaurant, but they only serve Monday and Thursdays. There's a pizza place that you have to order within 24 to 48 hours. So you better want pizza tomorrow. If not, if you're a finicky eater or you want pizza today but not tomorrow, don't do that because you're going to get the pizza and you're going to be like, I don't feel like pizza today. Well, it's too late. Like you can't. So some of these and some of the, the delivery fees are expensive. So you end up, if you want to have a nice steak and all the trimmings, it's like over $100 because of the food and then the delivery charge. So sometimes you're kind of, limited to what the NBA serves. The NBA is trying, right? I'm not going to rip them for like,
not bad.
It's not mush, but sometimes it's like, or like, can we get a vegetable here? Can we eat? I'm a big Brussels sprout guy. Try to eat healthier as I get older. Yeah. And so like they had Brussels sprouts, so my eyes lit up. So I had them give me a big old thing of Brussels sprouts. Like sometimes when you see the little things, I will always appreciate now the ability to get broccoli, Brussels sprouts, and vegetables on the outside when I get out of here because it's not like here.
I love that. Well, everyone listening, once Gary gets out, give him some good veggies. He deserves it for all of his great work in the bubble. I appreciate you touching on that, Gary. And again, I appreciate you keeping it real. Like I said, I think most times we're conditioned to saying everything's good, but we wanted to know. Again, it's like in the bubble. And even then, I was wondering, how do you guys even pack? Because I'm sure you didn't think you'd be down there that long. Do you even have enough clothing, Gary?
That's the thing. Yeah, okay, so I think everyone kind of pack two. I pack two. I'm a heavy packer anyway. Like I pack and I don't want to. Like I pack like a woman. Like and that's the good thing. Like women pack heavy. I'm right in that line. I was in that heavy packing line when the Lord made me. Like I like to pack a lot of stuff. So I pack like I usually do, and then I sent 2 boxes ahead of like extra shoes, extra. Like I didn't know how much hand sanitizer. Like now. Like hand sanitizer, they have bottles of the stuff here the league gives you. So like these things, you can grab 20 of these. Like so, I brought my own sanitizer, your toiletries. Like so, I bought and shipped all that stuff ahead, so I was comfortable. And then still, you might run out of things, so you're literally sometimes on eBay or Amazon ordering things for yourself. Some people ordering alcohol. Like there's no bars here for us. So they just opened one like 2 weeks ago. So
Nice.
in the early part, people were ordering, there's a place for us to order alcohol. Some people are ordering bottles of wine. Some people are ordering themselves microwave ovens, toaster ovens.
Wow.
One young lady bought a couch. Like it was like a $250 couch. She wanted a more comfortable couch. She's like, well, I'm going to be here 2-3 months. I might as well splurge now. And hey, I'll either give it away or I'll figure out what to do at the end of the 3 months. So everyone is trying to make things work because that's how you have to kind of do it. You have to figure out like, what can I order? What do I need? Like I order, mouthwash. Like you run out of mouthwash. Okay, let me order a case of mouthwash or 4 big things of mouthwash. Things that you kind of, because you're living here now. When you're anywhere past a couple of weeks, you're basically got to move. So you got to get your mind, to all the little things that you used to at home.
Oh my gosh. Again, I applaud all of you all in there. The sacrifice you're making and just surviving and bringing us the content we need. So that leads me to my next question, Gary. When all is said and done, outside of basketball, what do you think you'll take most from this experience when you go back home?
Wow. Just the ability to kind of deal with this, what the NBA was able to do health-wise to keep us all healthy. We test every day. There's been no positive tests. I think that kind of like, let's say that discipline from the league to make sure, and just the experience of being kind of in a place that we know this will never happen again. Like all the players in one place, all the coaches, referees, we remember those folks,
yeah.
Team fit like player people, scorekeepers, people who do, every time you go to an NBA game, I know you go to Wizards games, and all the people that work behind the scenes all have to be here, all have to quarantine and go through the same thing. So we're kind of considered each other like family now because we've all going through the same thing. Wearing masks everywhere, wearing masks when you watch a game, just doing all the things to make this comfortable. So I'll take away kind of the friendships I made and a lot of just the discipline of like just staying in the same place and not kind of going crazy because as I know some of the players had said, it could mess with your mental health. This can, mess if you're away from your family and you feel like I'm never getting out of here and how long is this going to last? You just have to put your head down and work and try to enjoy it. That's the thing. You can't look at this as like another day. And then the days will end up going faster because the days out here do run together. It's hard to tell like what day of the week it is because honestly, Kelsey, like it's a Saturday. In DMV, people are, hopefully socially distanced,
yes.
but hitting the streets, going out. It's another night in the district. Here, right. It's a Saturday. There's no parties. There's a game. So a Saturday is like a Tuesday, is like a Thursday, is like a Sunday. Like it's not a special day. I like Saturdays. College games are on. It's cool. But it's nothing. It's not like, oh well, tonight after the game we're all going out. Where are we going? We're going probably to the pool. But we can't leave this place. So that kind of makes it go a little faster when it all runs together.
And I like that you touched on that, Gary, because it sounds like you learned a lot about yourself, inside the bubble. And it sounds like you've grown inside the bubble. So that makes me just happy to hear. And I think even you're already a strong journalist, but you coming out of this, Gary, wow, even stronger. I mean, the experience that you're having. And I think it's incredible because I think, so many journalists from the outside looking in, we're wondering that, what is it really like for you all? How are you taking this experience? It sounds like it's going to be something that crafts your overall career, Gary. And I'm so excited to see any of your post pieces just on life in the bubble, what you've learned and what we have coming out of it. And I know everybody wants to talk to you about the games coming up. But before we get to the games, I want to ask you, there's been a lot of social justice going on, right, around the country, around the world, most recently the Breonna Taylor verdict. And so for you as a Black man, as a journalist, I mean, what has it been like in the bubble for you, kind of being detached from the world inside Orlando, but also still being attached to these issues because they affect the Black race as a whole?
Of course. The thing is that I've been very proud of being of the younger people in the NBA, the players who have become more politically active, more socially active, and speaking out. That's made me proud because I think, unfortunately, millennials, quote unquote, the baby, because most of the league now, it's like they're born in the 90s, okay? So there's some things that they missed, that they the civil rights movement, some of the things that in being born in the 70s, I grew up with because my parents told me and my grandparents told me.
Yeah.
The 90s babies didn't see that. And I that's understandable, right?
Yeah.
And they get accused of, these kids are all about their social media accounts and Instagram and Twitter followers and the newest kicks and dating the newest whatever. And now I think that this whole era since I think the George Floyd murder will be a benchmark point in hopefully in Black American history and American history of getting people more aware. I think a lot of these young men, and obviously let's not forget the women in the Wubble, the WNBA players too, have become more politically aware. Read more about your past. Read more about things that happened before you were born. I mean, I have younger relatives or whatever, and it's sort of like, hey, if it was before I was born, I ain't interested. It didn't happen because I wasn't here, so I don't know. And it's like you can't really look at things that way. And I think that a lot of these young men here in the bubble have read up on history, have educated themselves on certain particular cases, whether it be Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Michael Brown, even Rodney King, obviously in 1991, and have become more schooled on these things. And that's, you don't want to speak about things you don't know. And I think that these young men, I'm proud of them for being able to learn and read and ask older people, what was that like? Ask whether they're asking their coaches, their parents, whatever. What was that like? I mean, I wasn't around then, but take me through what was going on here. What was it like in the early 90s? When crack cocaine and a lot of things were going down, and things that affected our Black community so adversely. And then with the Rodney King, and then all, what happened? Because it's just the 90s are more than just really cool rap. There's a lot that went down in that decade. There's a lot that went down in the 80s, that good and bad things for our community. So I'm proud of these young men for speaking up and to be educated on these cases. And that's a good thing, because I think we've asked them, hey, guys, don't only think about, reality TV shows and the next car and all the things that are stereotypically associated with young professional athletes who are millionaires. Educate yourself about your community. And I remember, Kelsey, and I know you understand, a lot of these guys, I get emails, well, these guys are rich, they shouldn't say anything. These guys haven't forgot where they come from. They haven't forgot that some of these guys grew up in broken homes and situations, and they made it out, but doesn't mean they forget. It's like you forgetting where you came from, or me forgetting where I came from. We don't forget that, even though we're in a different situation and everything worked out okay. Just because everything worked out okay doesn't mean that we can't, say something about what's going on in our community that we've left, or we're used to be in, or we grew up in.
Right. And I appreciate you touching on that too, because I think sometimes too, just because everything looks perfect from the outside because of social media, right? Most of us post all of our wins. You don't see the losses, right? You don't see what somebody's going through. I think, money doesn't solve all. It just doesn't. At the end of the day, I'm still a Black woman in America. You were a Black man in America. All of our experiences are so different. And even my experience as a Black woman is so different from other Black women. So I think you never group and generalize people, into this box. And I think you're right. You have to know your history. You have to know your history. It's so important, and it shapes the now. And since you touched on the young players, Gary, and just what you've seen in them talking out on social justice, I want to know from you, if there is one, is there any one player that has just stood out to you the most in terms of how outspoken they've been, or just their growth on issues of social justice?
Well, I'll say, and I cover him a lot because he was known as Jaylen Brown. He's a natural born leader, and he was kind of the one of the people, Kelsey, in those meetings. Okay, remember about a month ago now, it seems, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but a month ago they had boycotted the games. They sat out the games, and they were thinking about all packing up and going home because of the Jacob Blake situation. And they were angry, and they were disappointed and frustrated, and they wanted the NBA to take more action in terms of social justice. So Jaylen Brown was one of the people, and he's only 23, who spoke in support of the Milwaukee Bucks. There were a lot of players, Kelsey, who were upset that the Bucks didn't inform other teams that they had planned on boycotting that game against Orlando. There was some real backlash against the Bucks players. Hey man, let us know. what were you guys thinking? Let us know, because you did this, and then we don't know what to do. Like there were 2 other games that day. I don't know if you recall. There was the Thunder and the Rockets, and the Lakers and the Blazers. And so you put those 4 teams all on kind of blast of, okay, what should we do? Should we boycott too? And they end up boycotting. And so these meetings, and so Jalen stood up and was like, listen, they did what they had to do. Don't jump on them hey, sometimes some of the best plans are spur of the moment. Like, hey, we all would have loved for them to sit there for a week and plan this out and write it down and have bullet points and all that. Sometimes the best moves are like now. And so he defended them. And when guys are talking about going home, Jaylen Brown said in that meeting, listen, guys, like, if we're going to go home, let's make impact on our communities. Like, let's be on the ground of our communities. If you guys are just going home because you guys got to want to get in the pool and hang out at your luxurious home and see all your friends, we need to stay here then, because that's if we're going to walk away from this, and we're going to make a major situation with the owners, and the NBA is not going to be the same if we just walk out on the season. If we're going to do that, we need to be in the front protesting, meeting with political leaders. Like, all you guys need to take that responsibility in and do that and make an impact. If that's what we want to walk away. If not, we can stay here, see this thing through. And I think that got to a lot of people who said, you know what, we need to see this thing through, because now they have a forum to be able to speak and wear whatever T-shirts they want. I'm sure you've seen all the T-shirts, the politically active T-shirts, the Breonna Taylor T-shirts, and the T-shirts about stopping police brutality and, and violence against Black people. Like, I've applauded the players for, it's not stuff that's just Nike, and I usually see these guys, they're decked out in their shoe company stuff and all this gear, and they're one big marketing ploy. But here they're not doing that. So I applaud Jaylen Brown for kind of being one of the young leaders of this league.
And I think it's so important, and lets you know the NBA is in great hands, as we look to the future of it. And that leads me to Gary. Do you think the social justice wave is social justice in sports? Do you think it's going in the right direction? And by that, I mean, I know we've seen it kind of occur on social media now, right? People are galvanizing on social media. Players are making sure that everyone can see what they're doing, see what they feel. They're tweeting their thoughts and emotions, right? They don't have to necessarily come to me or you to give a quote. They can just put it out there. Do you think it's going in the right direction? And do you think, if so, has the NBA supported it, rightfully so, for to keep these players just knowing that they have a voice and they are still human beings at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think the NBA has done all they can to support their players, because they remember, they understand their league is 75 to 80% Black. Right. And a lot of these guys did not come from great backgrounds. A lot of these guys were not Will and Carlton and the Banks family, right? Fresh Prince.
Yes, we know.
All right. Y'all 90s babies. I gotta run things past you, because some of y'all be looking at me like, I don't remember that. So anyway, I think that the NBA has understood that, like, these guys have a voice, and we have to encourage that. We can't be the NFL, and now the NFL suddenly, after 3 years of Kaepernick being out of the league, it suddenly said, okay, you guys are kind of right. The NBA has always supported their players, and I do think the social justice thing is taking a really positive direction with athletes. We accuse these young men of being dumb jocks. We accuse them of being just, all, as I said before, all about get the newest car and the latest kicks and IG hits and buy my new headphones and all that stuff. I got a clothing line. Like, we accuse these guys of being shallow and material and all about the money and about the women and the life. But then when they speak, well, shut up. We just want to see your ball. Like, we can't have both ways. That's not going to work. Right. These guys are thinkers, and it's a lot like reminiscent of the 60s, where you had Muhammad Ali and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and you had players exploring, like, their religion. Some players in 50 years ago were exploring the nation Islam. They were guys who were thinking more about the world around them than just hoop. And I think that that's good to have that type of renaissance. I think it's good to have social justice awareness, as long as you're aware. Like, I don't want players speaking out on stuff that they don't know about. Read about the case. There's plenty. There's Wikipedia. There's books. There's stories. educate yourself. Take a day and you can get it on your phone. Look at your girl and just read about these things so you know all the particulars of certain cases, because the first thing people are going to say is, you don't know, that's not what happened, or you're not educated on that case. A lot of people are talking about the Breonna Taylor case in that sense, but a lot of these guys educated themselves, and that's a good thing. You want these guys to be well-read and well-schooled on these things, because young people are looking at them. They are role models. Although some of these kids are born in 2000, Zion Williamson and some of these young people are already role models, even though they're literally born in this century, which seems inconceivable that they're the professional athletes, but they have a responsibility too. They are no longer kids.
Right. And you talk about them being no longer kids and just their social justice in terms and what they need to know, right? Read up on the case, don't just talk blindly, basically, like my grandma used to say. But going off of that, I think, the women have been doing that. We talked about the wobble. Gary, what do we have to do to amplify women's voices, especially in sports, especially in the WNBA, where, again, they've been on the forefront of this, Gary, as you probably know, for years. Yet, for some reason, some people are just getting, as the young kids like to say, Gary woke. The WNBA has doing this work. How can we amplify their voices and make sure people know that the WNBA has been in front of social change?
Yeah, I think the WNBA has always done a great job. They allow the players to do to exert their power, and that's a good thing. So the WNBA has always been in the lead. And I think there's a lot of people, Kelsey, that love women's sports, that love women's basketball, right? The one thing I'll say about women's sports and basketball is I think it needs to be more open to fans. Like, the NBA gets criticized, NFL gets criticized because they're a major sport. Baseball gets criticized. When people tend to criticize the WNBA, it's not because we don't like women's sports. It's not because we don't like women. It's because we want to see the sport better. I want to see the WNBA better. So if I have a criticism or people have criticism about the WNBA, it's because we want to see it better. We want to see it the best, right? Just like the NBA. People have issues all up and down with the NBA. And I listen and I understand, and some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. And I think there should be more of a a collective, hey, we have an amazing sport, the WNBA, and women's sports. Obviously women's tennis is all that. With Naomi Osaka, Serena still getting it done. I think that with the WNBA, they set the groundwork for social justice, for speaking, for messages they have. Remember when the Minnesota Lynx wore the T-shirts after the young man was killed in Minneapolis with Maya Moore, and obviously, her story is amazing. But I think the WNBA is there's people who love women's basketball. I love the art of women's basketball because there's no dunks. It's not as much just it's more about the game, more about the precision, more about doing the fundamentals than it is the NBA, where sometimes the fundamentals of the NBA get lost.
Yeah.
But just because we say, well, this is how the sport could be better, this doesn't mean we don't like women's. I love women's sports. I want to see WNBA kick butt. So I think that's my only thing with how the WNBA can expand is allow your fans and allow the fans who might have an issue express that issue or listen, as opposed to you don't like women's sports, you're against us. If you don't love us, you're against us. It's I love this sport. I love women's sports. And I think that there's a lot of people who want to embrace the WNBA. I think that the WNBA has a great opportunity to have more teams and to have more people speaking in these social issues. They are amazing with what they're doing, especially in the wobble.
Yes, they've been killing it. I appreciate that, what you touched on, because I think you're right. I think those of us that cover the WNBA, I think those that are WNBA players, we're protective, right? We're protective. Yeah. And I think what you're saying is completely right. I think anything in life, really, you have to be open to constructive criticism if it's going to make you better, right? It's just like us as people, right? To get better, you need to be open to constructive criticism. And so I completely hear what you're saying. I think all of us can agree that we want to see the WNBA grow because I think their product is there and it is so strong. All right, we're going to talk basketball soon, Gary, but before we move on, I just want to get your personal, when you first heard the Breonna Taylor verdict basically come down, you talked about how the players handled it, but how did you handle it?
I was down. I'll say this. I thought they were going to get the cop they got. I had no expectation about the other two officers, but the cop who kind of went rogue, I just didn't think that they would mess with our heads and do the whole wonton thing. I thought that they would get him for being reckless. And I don't know who shot the bullets that killed Breonna Taylor. One of those officers did, right? but I did not think that they would do the wanton. I thought they would accuse him of maybe manslaughter. That hurt me. I mean, it's sort of like a mind game, I think. It's like, we're going to get the guy, but we're going to get him on a sentence that he'll never go to jail for. And we're going to give him a bail amount of $15,000, $1,500, and he's out. So, if he can scrape together $1,500, he'll never spend a day in jail. He'll probably get a fine or maybe community service, and we'll keep it moving. And it was hard, but I guess we're all saying we're not surprised. They're going to come up with reasons as to why they didn't kill this woman, or they did it with rightful and quote unquote intentions, or it just happened, or her boyfriend fired at us. It's sad, Kelsey, that in 2020, like, we're still so separated by race. Like, I thought everyone said when Obama was president, it's a post-racial America, race doesn't matter, we're all one, yay, and then boom, with our current president, it's done a complete 180, and now race has never been so divisive. And so I wasn't surprised. I feel like, the Black woman is so disrespected. When they're missing, no one cares. When someone of other persuasion is missing, there's all these campaigns. Right. It's sad. It's so blatant, and I just don't know how people don't understand it. I don't understand how people could say, like, this was a righteous thing. Like, they weren't going after Nino Brown. They weren't going after the biggest kingpin in Louisville. They were going after a small time, that she had been associated with. But I'm just kind of like, wow, like, y'all had, this guy was not some big time, interstate drug dealer. Like, he was seemed like what I've read and stuff I've read, because I've tried to educate myself too, kind of a small time guy who, you need all that firepower to go after what you think might be someone associated with him with guns. You can't just knock on the door and say, can you come out? Can we talk to you? Like, I don't get it. I don't get three cops with guns. I don't get all of I don't get the midnight thing. Well, we thought she was there alone. Okay, so you go at midnight. Like, I don't think we'll ever get answers. And I think it's unfortunate. Like, I'm tired of losing Black lives like this, and we got to keep it moving and keep our head up when young Black lives. This woman was 26 years old. It's like, my goodness. I mean, we're not talking about someone her whole life ahead of her, trying to do the right thing. Trying to be better. I've read things, just, taking care of her little sister. Like, this is just a terrible thing.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. And I think you touched on some of my same emotions. You talked about her being 26, I just turned 28, and it's scary. It's scary. And, I try to remain hopeful that things will get better. I think you have to have some type of hope, but when you keep seeing these type of things, it's sometimes hard to detach yourself. And I think I had to even detach myself from social media after that, just because it was a lot. And it takes a lot on us. I think, especially now with mental health too, it's heartbreaking. And I love what you said. I think, we have to protect Black women. I think that's the best way to put it there. It's just a lot, but I appreciate you touching on that. I can't imagine, what it's like already being detached from the world and then hearing that case in Orlando.
Yeah, it's hard to, but you're not surprised. And it's just, you try to read up on it and you try to figure out, okay, well, I'm going to be as fair as possible and see what was the side of the officers, like what. And I don't see it. I don't see the ultimate firepower. This is not like, I don't understand. You're going to a 26-year-old woman's house. You don't expect her to be armed. You don't and you just come with guns blazing. I don't understand that. I don't. And, it's unfortunate that the disparity in our social justice system, like law enforcement, in terms of sentences, the women, the actresses who are paying to get their kids into college are getting 2-week jail sentences, where women are lying about their address to get their young kid an education and doing time. Like, it's just so unfair. Yeah. And you're just like, how does anyone not notice this? How does this keep going on? Yeah. Like, and why doesn't someone say, like, this is not right? Like, there's a disparity, and if it's strictly financial, okay, we do live in a capitalistic world where there's haves and have-nots, and I hate that. Yeah. But wow, like, why is this so unfair? And Black people are just expected to keep our heads up and keep it moving. And you just should be glad you're here. You know, what are you complaining about? You're blessed. You got nothing to complain. But we have family members. We have young relatives in the state. You just turned 28. Like, we have people who could be in that situation who at 26 may not associate themselves with the greatest people all time. I mean, I could think about to my 26. I knew some guys, and I wasn't running with them hard, but I knew some guys that weren't up to great good. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the stage where you know so many people, and your decision making is not necessarily always, you grow into things. That's what you mature. Right. That's what maturity is about. We all don't make the greatest decisions. We all don't associate with the perfect people. Right. You have faith in people, Kelsey, who might let you down. You might see someone from back in the day is like, hey, I'm over the stuff I was doing, but they might be back into it, or you want to give them a second chance. I mean, so it's just so many unfortunate disparities that, like, it's hard to continue to have faith. It really is.
And just hearing you bounce off of that, and I want to shout out Andy Burrows, who commented and said everything that you're saying is completely right. And he's over in the UK. You can see that with the problems we have in America. But it sounds like you get so passionate about it, Gary. And I'm just curious, is this part of the reason why you got into journalism, to just create change?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I just want to do something different with my life. I wanted to make my mother proud. My mother raised me by herself. And I wanted to do something that I like to do, sports journalism. It was, you remember the people who influenced your career. And when I was in college, I knew I wanted to do something in journalism. I had a liking for it. I wasn't necessarily a great writer, but I loved sports. Yeah. And I was like, okay, so I started going to career fairs when I was like 20 years old. And I met a lady at one of my career fairs named Annette John Hall, who used to work a longtime columnist at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And then she worked at the San Jose Mercury News because I went to UC Berkeley. So I was in the area.
Right.
And she was, an amazing Black woman. Like, every time I see her at our convention, Kelsey at NABJ, and she knows me, we know each other well now. And she might have been, I was 20, she might have been 30. So, don't think that you're too old at 28 or to have an impact on someone who's younger. Like, or to be someone's mentor, or to give someone great advice. Like, I think people think, oh, I got to be 40 something. Like, she might have been 30, right? Or might have been 32, maybe. She was not that old, much older. And she told me at this fair, you could be a sports writer. Because I thought, and this is my, being old school, like, I thought to be a writer, you had to do everything. Cops, city council, obituaries. Like, I didn't want to cover triple murders. I didn't want to do, like, the hard news. I wanted to do sports. And so she's like, Gary, you can be a full-time sports writer for a living. And I was like, really? I don't have to, like, break in and do. And so when she told me that, I was like, I'm in. Oh. And I always remind her every NABJ conference I see her, I remind her, and she laughs, and because it was a long time ago, about how people can influence you. And so that encouraged me to get into the business. And once I knew I could write sports for a living and I could get paid for it and I could travel, and I love sports. I was never a great athlete. I played a little bit, but it's the closest thing to playing, and now you can be creative. You can cover teams. You can create your own kind of narrative in terms of writing about team, and you're like an artist in a sense.
Yeah.
So that's what got me into it. And as I always say, like, it's not, like, I know, Kelsey, people come up to you and you're like, okay, I'm not that old. Like, why you come up to me like I'm like an old head, or I'm somebody you should really take advice from? But you never know what 21-year-old or what 20-year-old looks at you and goes, wow. And then you're like that person. There's a fellow journalist, Vinny Goodwill, who we both know, and he's younger, and he was kind of looking up to us. And then suddenly we see him at the convention, and
Yeah.
young folks are coming up to him, and he's like, "Wow, it's happening." And so you just never know when you might have an impact on someone's career just with some advice, encouragement. That's what we need to do to each other. Like, constructive criticism too, like we talked about earlier, hey, this is what you need to get better at. No does not mean I think you're trash. Like,
Right.
we have to stop we have to stop the Drake stuff. You're
Yeah.
hating on me. You don't
Right.
you don't love me, right? No. I want you to be better. This is how you can be better.
Right.
And young folks have to learn, and I'm saying all, but some have to learn how to take constructive criticism because we old heads want you to be better. So for me, it was Annette John Hall who guided me toward a career in journalism. And once I got in, I was sold.
Yeah, and your career has been history again. I think you've truly grown, Gary, to be just one of the prominent sports journalists. And it's great to hear your story. And shout out to NABJ for bringing us together. We're not going to tell our Detroit story because we have NABJ Detroit convention story that you guys will have to hear some other. I don't know if you hear that story because it was that crazy.
Yeah, it was funny.
But good memories. And again, it's just inspiring to hear that. And I think going off of what you said, for me, it's been so special, Gary, since joining the Washington football team. Just get so much love and respect. And it's been just especially special to me to get love from my hometown people because the NBA is very dear to my heart. And that's a special shout out to everyone out there. All right, Gary, I can't have you on without us talking basketball. We've been having such a good conversation, but going off of that, I know there's a big game tonight. Of course, there was a big game last night, so let's start with that one. Of course, the Miami Heat lead the Boston Celtics 3-2, but Andy Burrows think there'll be a game 7. So tell me what you like so far about the Celtics in this series, and do you think they can come back and pull it off, or is it a done deal for the Miami Heat?
I wouldn't say it's a done deal, Kelsey. I would say that the Celtics are going to have to play 2 really, really good games. I think that they found something. They've won 2 out of the last 3 games in this series, and they found something that they can go with. They just have to be consistent, and they have to play a complete game. Even in Friday's game, they didn't play a very good first half, and they were able to play an amazing second half, and that made up for it. But you're not going to get away with that too often. So they've got to come into game 6, punch first, and play a good, complete game. And then anything happens in a game 7. The thing is that you have to, like, when you're the desperate team and you're the team that no one expects to win, just like the Denver Nuggets out here where people were like, there's no way they're going to beat the Clippers. And then, okay, they got a game. Okay, they got another one. When you get to a game 7, anything goes. So the Celtics are just trying to get to that one winner-take-all game. And so they need to play one more very good, complete game in order to do that. I think they can, but Miami's a very good team. Miami Mel's getting back to the NBA Finals for the first time in 6 years. So it's going to be a tough task.
Yeah, and talk about a tough task. I think Miami probably surprised most people out there, Gary. So I wonder if they've surprised you, and what have you liked so far best out of them, inside the NBA bubble? Because I think for all of us, I don't know how many people put Miami in this spot. Don't tell me you did, because I wanted
I didn't have Miami this far. I did say when this all began, I said Miami's the team to look for. And I'm not saying, I was like, because they had a lot to prove. Like the last couple of years, they've missed the playoffs. And now they got Jimmy Butler. They put this team together. Like, there's no excuse for the Heat. Like, let's see what they can do here, because this is a big postseason for the Heat. And they ended up obviously sweeping Indiana and then taking a gentleman's sweep against Milwaukee. And so they played the best ball here in the bubble. So I had not watched them all that extensively this season. So to see them up close and personal here in the bubble, you're impressed with their teamwork. Obviously, Jimmy Butler's a guy who has made some, had some adversaries over the years and ruffled some feathers with some of his, toughness. But he's a tough guy, and the Heat have that culture, and I think you've heard of it. Like they work harder. They don't want anyone to be in better shape than they are. They work tirelessly, and if you don't work as hard, they get you out of there, right? So I think to have like those type of players all in that culture who work hard, who are under, like undrafted Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, who's a one and done, who people didn't expect him to be this good. Jake Bam Adebayo, another guy who was pretty good in college. You liked him, but you didn't expect him to be that difference maker. Like guys with chips on their shoulders, and you join the ultimate guy with a chip on his shoulder in Jimmy Butler, who just lives with it. It's like surgically impaired in his shoulder. Then you've got a very good basketball team. And then Eric Spoelstra is a great coach. So you've got to buy that Heat culture.
Yeah, that Heat culture, I think, has rubbed off on everybody. I don't know who's not on that Heat bandwagon now. You talked about Bam and Tyler. There's so many players that we've galvanized around since the series has started. Since we're talking about the East, and Gary, we're in DC. I have to ask you, any hope for my Wizards next year? Any hope for our Wizards next year? John Wall's coming back. Can we do something next year? Can we make some noise?
Yeah, John's got some growing to do. There was some things that didn't go well for him over the last month or so. Yeah. And John's got some soul searching to do about, him being a leader. And obviously, I lived in D.C. for 4 years. I know how close-knit that area is, how much they love their Wizards, what great basketball area. They deserve a winner. And they had it for a minute, a few years ago when they went to the conference semifinals and with Beal and Wall. I think it's going to have to work. Like, Beal's your guy in terms of, like, he's the franchise guy. Wall's coming back. You got guys like Troy Brown, Hachimura's a good young player. They have a chance to flip it pretty quickly if things go right. But it's all about the decision making. You got to draft well. You got to sign the right guys. You have to build the right culture. John has to come back right. 30 years old is not. It's young for most of us to be. I would love to be 30 again, but for a professional athlete, a man, a John Wall who's played 11 years in the league now, has been through a lot of injuries. You hope that he can be completely healthy and completely ready to go next year. So I do think the Wizards are doing the right things. I like Tommy Shepard as a GM. I'm a fan of Scott Brooks as coach. I know he's had some criticisms, but they've always been dealing with injuries. I thought it was a little disappointing, their performance down here in the bubble, but without Beal and Bertans, that was tough on them. Right. But I think they have a good, growing young core. Jerome Robinson, a kid that I got to know when he was at Boston College. Right. And they have the pieces. And the East, the East is not a great, really strong conference. I mean, you can fight for the 8th spot. You can, what I'm saying? Like, Brooklyn was Orlando's the 8th. So if you win 40 games, 37 games, you can get to the playoffs. So it is possible to flip it. So I'm going to be positive for the DMV folks about the Wizards. But John's got to come back right. Bradley healthy. Hopefully the shoulder thing doesn't linger. And Hachimura, Brown, they got some young pieces, and now they got another draft pick. Bring another guy in and try to flip this thing quickly.
Who from the draft do you think would fit this Wizard squad good? Like, what's the piece they need to add, would you say?
Wow. I mean, you could always and I want to always mention I love Thomas Bryant. I just love his energy. I love watching that guy play. I love what he's made out of his career after kind of maybe coming out a little bit too early and kind of bouncing around a little bit. I love Thomas Bryant. I mean, I think elite shooters are always good. And I don't know if they're going to re-sign Bertans because obviously he's a free agent. That's why he didn't come to the bubble. But I just think there's players. There's plenty of players to shoot. This is not a Zion type draft where it's like there's a good amount of players that can help teams. There's 10 guys that the Wizards can pick. The kid from Dayton, Obi Toppin. Like, there's players that they can choose that can help them right away. The question is, do you want to take kind of a project guy, a guy who take a couple of years, or do you want to take a kid who might be 21, 22, and in the NBA, that's old for a rookie. I don't understand that. I'd love to be 22 still too. But do you want to take a kid like a Hachimura who can help you now, who can fit into your culture now? That's what the Wizards have to decide, because these drafts, quite honestly, Kelsey, are kind of crapshoots at these days. Some of these kids aren't ready. Some of these kids are going to take a while. Other guys are going to come in and help right away. That's what the Wizards have to decide. Which way do we want to go? I think they're good. I mean, they've got a great backcourt. Hachimura and Brown, and then Bryant. That's a solid starting five. So now you're talking about you need someone for the future. You got good young players. A backup for Beal, someone who can back up point guard for Wall. Because you don't know. I mean, they got a couple years left in their contract, so they have a lot of decisions to make. But I do think there's hope there.
That's good. But that's all we want to hear is hope. We're not asking for a championship next year. We're not doing all that, Gary. We just want hope. And then one more thing on the Wizards, one thing they're always asking is, what's it going to take for Bradley Beal to get some respect on a national level, Gary? When can
hard. I know. Like, I voted for him second team All NBA because I just thought he was an amazing had an amazing season on on a team that he had to carry that was injured. Most injuries was the coherent theme for Washington this season, with John being out and other guys, missing time. It's just going to, Washington's a tough place because not a lot of national TV games, not a lot of big games that you can look and see the big stage where they're playing at the Lakers, they're playing at the Knicks, or they're playing at the Heat, or they're playing games, at the Warriors where it's TNT is their ESPN. Like, you don't really get to see Bradley unless you have League Pass.
Right.
And sometimes it's Bradley scoring 47 points, but they lose the game. And so I think people look at Bradley and say, well, how much does he count in winning?
Yeah.
How much is he helping the Wizards win? And that's a tough responsibility to put on one player. So I do think he'll get his respect. I think he's a marvelous player, a great scorer, a guy who deserves more respect. But it's tough when you play in a city like Washington that doesn't have that buzz to it. Like, you look at Dame Lillard in Portland, who's had the big playoff moments.
Right.
Has Bill had a big playoff moment? That's what gets you on the All NBA team. Chris Paul taking the Thunder to the playoffs after everyone thought that they were just mailing it in after trading Paul George and they were just going to give up on the season. Bradley is going to need to do something extraordinary with that team. If he gets the Wizards to the playoffs next year, I guarantee you he'll get his kudos. But I think people look at players who don't play for winning teams and go, how much does all those numbers really mean if you're not winning games?
That's what it comes down to. This is what we hear. And Gary, I'm happy you touched on that, because there are some people out there coming for y'all ballots. Like some wanted y'all at the neck for some of the votes you put in. So what would you say to the general public? What do they need to know about it when you all are going into voting? Like, what do you think is not understood maybe for some reason when it comes to NBA ballots?
I explained this to a young man who came at me about a week ago.
Yeah.
There are different people that vote for have different ways of looking at the election for voting, right? There's those who vote strictly on numbers. There's those who vote on analytics. There's those who vote for effect on their team, how much they win. There's those who vote for people that they see the most. Like, if I'm in the Eastern Conference, I see Toronto 4 times. I see Philadelphia 4 times.
Right.
I see, Cleveland, Detroit, all these teams 4 times. So I get an extensive look over, let's say, someone from Phoenix or someone from Utah, where you might see twice. And then it might be that the guy was hurt one of the games, so you might have seen him once. So I think that there's different areas and methods that people vote. I respect everyone's vote as long as it's not outrageous. I mean, I had my Carmelo vote over LeBron 7 years ago. People still give me, a tough time about that. So I'm not one to criticize how people vote. As long as you have a rational way. There's arguments. I voted Beal second team All NBA. I think 2 other people did. I thought he just had a marvelous season. I thought he was one of the second best shooting guards, or the fourth best shooting guard in the NBA. I think if you had a draft, you would take Beal in that draft as a second or third best shooting guard for your team, just strictly on talent and performance. So I think people look at it like, well, you should vote for this guy. Nothing's absolute. That's why we live in America. Everybody has different opinions. Some people love Beyonce. Some people love Jill Scott. Some people love Erykah. You can't argue as to why I like Beyonce.
Yeah.
And you like Nicki Minaj. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are difficult arguments to win. Now, if you're talking about coming with someone who's coming off the bench, or you're just trying, I get that. But there's reasons and cases for a lot of people as to why they get voted in. Some of them might not make sense, but I think you have to talk to the person and see how they look at voting. And there's different reporters that come at it. Some people vote for the guys that they see the most, or guys that they like. I'm not particularly crazy about that philosophy, but there's all types of angles of voting.
I appreciate you touching on that. And people, please spare their mentions, please. I've seen them come for you all. So that's why I wanted you to explain it. Gary, I appreciate you letting me take so much of your time. I want to touch on two more things, and I know I have to get you back to work in the bubble. So, of course, the game that everyone's looking forward to tonight, we have Lakers, Nuggets. Is there any chance for the Nuggets, Gary? Or is it time for us to just take our Denver gear and pack it home?
I think there's a chance, yeah. I think that they can win tonight, and they've done this twice before. They're survivors. They play hard. They just didn't play as well in game 4 in terms of like closing it out. They were always kind of playing from behind, but they are a dangerous team. They do not give up. They come back from deficits. So I give Denver a chance to win tonight. Of course, I don't think the Lakers are going to look at them like they're going to lay down. Denver's not going to lay down. They're going to go out fighting. So I think tonight will be a great game. I know Denver's season is on the line, just like the Celtics were last night. So I think the Nuggets can win this game. And anytime you send a series extended, you make it interesting and you add some intrigue and some doubt in the team that's favored.
I appreciate you touching on it. It's going to be a good one. I know we're all excited for tonight and everyone riding the LeBron train. And right, do you think some of the criticism LeBron got in the last game, Gary, was fair? Are people being too judgy too quickly, or what were your thoughts on that?
He got
some criticism that LeBron got for his last game performance.
I mean, I think LeBron always gets criticized. I think it's unfair.
Yeah.
But I think he was fine. I think it's Anthony Davis is a great player, and LeBron can divert to him. So there's there's times LeBron ain't going to be great. He's a great player. Not all great players are great every night. So, but I think he's had a great season. 35 years old. We never thought that a man 17 years in the league would play with so much power and so much force and still be top 2 in the NBA. If you want to include Giannis, that's a debate now. Who's better, him or Giannis? After Giannis has kind of fell short in the playoffs, but I think LeBron's a marvelous player. So, I think a lot of the criticism he gets is a little unfair. But the Lakers are on the verge of the finals. It's exactly where he wants to be.
Exactly. And that's why I think we're all so excited to watch them. And before I let you go, Gary, you have something pretty cool coming up. I want to make sure I put it on the screen.
Oh.
A brand new book. Spencer Haywood Rule, Battles, Basketball, and the Making of an American Iconolist. I am so excited for this. You and Mark J. Spears collaborated on this. For those out there that want to pre-order this book, it's coming out next week, right? October
6th, Amazon.
Nice. I'm going to make sure I order it. Even though maybe, Gary, you'll surprise me and I'll open my mail one day and I'll see the book.
Maybe. We'll see.
I'm excited. But tell us about this book, Spencer Haywood. I had a chance to meet him, luckily, at NABJ, talking about NABJ in Detroit. Talk about this book and what we can expect to learn from it and read from it.
Well, Spencer has an amazing story, and I think a lot of folks my age and even in younger people obviously don't really know his story. He was the first player ever to leave college early and enter the NBA. And in the late 60s and early 70s, that was against the rules. The NBA did not allow what they called then hardship cases. Hardship case meant that you needed the money for your family. You went to the NBA and said, listen, my family is poor. I'm good enough to play in the NBA. I need to make money now to help support my family. And they called it a hardship case. That term actually lasted into the 80s, although it was not much the case anymore for a lot of these guys. Right. So when Spencer left the University of Detroit after his second year, he was ready for the NBA in 1969, but the NBA would not allow him to play. You had to be 4 years removed from your entering college. So he could have hung out for 2 more years and entered the league. He didn't have to go back to college. It's like, you can't go home, but you got to get out of here. Like, you don't have to go to college, but you got to do something for 4 years after high school to come into the league. So he went to the ABA, where he played a year. He was the MVP of the league and Rookie of the Year in his first league for a team called the Denver Rockets, which ended up being the Houston Rockets. Mm-hmm. And then he ended up lobbying to go. He signed with the Seattle Supersonics, which now the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he lobbied to get into the NBA. He legally tried to get into the NBA without sitting out another year. Right. So the NBA blocked him. There was several injunctions filed. There was times he showed up to an arena and they would pull him off the court before the game. Like, this was a back and forth thing. Remember, Kelsey, like the league in the early 70s, in the late 60s was a mostly white league with all white owners. They did not want 19 or 20-year-old black men to come into the league because they thought it would, they did not want the league to become too black. Mm-hmm. They did not want these guys who were from the streets of Detroit and DC and LA, who were obviously good enough to play in the NBA. They didn't want these guys in the league. They wanted them to go through the college thing. They wanted them to go through that process. They didn't want guys who weren't fully college educated or didn't spend 4 years. Right. So you had owners blocking him. And then, Kelsey, you had other players because there was like, well, do you want all these young dudes coming in and taking your job? So a lot of NBA veteran players did not want these guys in the league either because they saw the influx of all this young talent mostly from the inner cities who came into the league who were ready to play in the NBA at 19. Now that seems normal. You look at Kevin Durant and you look at Kobe and you're like, well, yeah, I mean, all these dudes were ready. But back then, there was a generation of guys who could have played in the NBA. Look at Wilt Chamberlain. Look at some of these great, amazing players who had to go to college. So Spencer got a lot of flack from entering the league. He finally, Supreme Court ruling vote 7-2, and Thurgood Marshall was on that Supreme Court that voted him, and he voted yes that he should play. So he was allowed to play. Yeah. And from then he had an interesting, fascinating career. Definitely had his ups and downs. He married the model Iman. This is before she married David Bowie. He has a daughter with Iman. So, he lived the life. He had some drug issues and troubles. He was kind of booted out of the league, but he came back and still played well. So he finally, in 2015, for his accomplishments, was voted to the Hall of Fame. So this is kind of a coronation of a great career. He set the groundwork for a lot of these younger guys. He fought the battle to clear them for the Durants and the Kobes, God bless them, and the Kevin Garnetts and the LeBrons to come into the league with no resistance. And because he took all the resistance, he fought battles for years and he felt like the NBA held a grudge against him for years for fighting that rule. He felt the owners wanted him out of the league for years. So this is a man who's made peace with the league. Everything is good now. He's still an amazing guy, 71 years old. Yeah. Sharp as a tack. So it's great. It was great to do this book on him.
So exciting. So many things to learn. I hope everyone checks it out. I'll put it on the screen one more time. October 6th, Amazon. You can get it from anywhere else, Gary, they can get the book from?
Amazon's our main one. If you talk to me, I might be able to send you a copy.
Or talk to Gary to stay in his sentence, and maybe you'll get your free copy. Gary, again, I appreciate your time so much for being on this show. I'm going to make sure I get the book. I hope everybody else does too. And before I let you go, just a fun way to end. Favorite DC memory when you lived here?
Wow. Honestly, Kelsey, like I loved it there. I left only for a good job offer. Right. I absolutely adored living in DC. Yeah. And it was to a point where like there was so much to do for African Americans. Yeah. And it was just sometimes like turning stuff down. Like, I just don't want to go out tonight. I know there's 7 things to do. Like the choices were just plentiful. I grew up in LA, where honestly, Kelsey, seeing African Americans with money was not abnormal. It was not like, oh, what you do to get that car. Like It was, and to see people in DC from, obviously the HBCU community and the fraternity sororities, to see Black people doing great things was always uplifting about living in the district. So that's probably it. And just all the choices, the people, I met some great people there. It was a wonderful place to live.
I appreciate that, Gary. And thank you so much for letting me steal an hour and 9 minutes of your time today for the show. Appreciate it. Best wishes in the bubble. Hopefully we get you home soon. We gotta get these games going. And I hope you win the game tonight. Who's going to win it all, Gary? Who's going to win it all? Who's your champion?
Who's going to win it? I think the Lakers will win it all. I think the Nuggets will win tonight, though. I'm going to put my money on the Nuggets.
Something to think about. Gary Washburn, thank you so much for joining me from the Boston Globe. Remember to check out his book coming on October 6th. And make sure you follow Gary. He's a very great follow, giving you all updates from the bubble. Thanks so much for your time, Gary.
Thank you, Kelsey. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Have a great one. Bye. All right, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. Truly, truly, truly appreciate your time. I also want to give a special thanks to Maureen McCormick, who joined me on my latest audio edition of the show. On the next audio version, I'm so excited to be joined by Dave Johnson, of course, another name that we know very well here in the DC area. And Maureen, I just want to thank you so much, too, for allowing me to share my story of my Uncle Rod, who unfortunately is no longer here, but is very near and dear to my heart. It's why Special Olympics is near and dear to my heart. He had Down syndrome, just an incredible, incredible individual. And I thank you, Maureen McCormick, for allowing me to just be so vulnerable and share his story as you shared your story about your brother, Denny. Again, thank you everyone for joining me on the special live stream edition of Listen In with KNN. We'll be back next Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as always. And then, of course, next Saturday at 2 p.m. And as always, check out the audio edition of the show, which will drop every Wednesday at noon. And, of course, check out foxsports1340am.com and my website, KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Until next week, enjoy the sports world, smile, and please don't take your fantasy sports too seriously, because there's always another way. Bye, guys.
Follow Kelsey on social media at The Real K Nelson. And catch each broadcast of Listen In with KNN on air at AM 1340 and 96.9 FM Fox Sports Radio on YouTube, on Facebook and Twitter, and online at KelseyNicoleNelson.com. Thank you for watching this special live stream broadcast of Listen In with KNN.
You used to hear me on your airwaves or hear me on my hit podcast, but now I'm taking you to the screen. You'll love Elevator Thoughts. We will talk the latest trending in sports. It's game time. What better way to get to know those that visit the show than over some good food and drink? It's time for confessions.